Welcome to The Sideshow. Okay, welcome to The Sideshow. Mark is going to be taking the helm on this episode. So, Mark, why don't you tell everyone what we're going to be talking about today?
Thanks, Mike. Today is, I think, a true classic. We're going to look at Van Halen's first album, their self-titled debut, Van Halen, Side 1. The beginning of Van Halen, the first side of their first album.
A big noise.
Yes. This album, it truly did make some big noise. Arguably one of the most successful debut albums from bands in this particular time period. I mean, we've spent a lot of time talking about albums from the late 1970s. A lot of good music, a lot of good albums. A lot of bands, though, that had been kind of hardworking bands for a while. Number of albums, and then finally you kind of reach a critical mass on that third and fourth album that kind of propels you to where you're going to go. A little different story here. Van Halen had been together for a while before this album came out. I think that you can trace the origin of that band to about, the early 1970s, 1972 in Pasadena, California. When these guys originally got together, Eddie Van Halen, his brother Alex Van Halen, Michael Anthony, who played the bass, and then David Lee Roth, who's on the vocals. Kind of some interesting stories, the young bands kind of bopping around. And, the reason they really knew David Lee Roth is because they'd rent his audio equipment to go and do shows, and they thought that bringing him in as a vocalist would be a bargain, right, for the band, even though they didn't necessarily look for him for his vocal qualities. But hey, the guy's got an amp, right? So let's bring him in. And it was cheaper than paying the $10 a night they were paying him. But the result, they bopped around quite a bit, at the time, really strong local following from strong performances. In fact, they, got a following. They were, by the mid 70s, they were kind of a staple in the LA music scene, playing at venues like the Whiskey A Go-Go, which, a lot of, really, important bands kind of spent some time playing there as well. Before they finally got, noticed, there's a little bit of controversy over, whether it was Gene Simmons from Kiss that actually discovered them or someone who brought them to Gene Simmons. But a little bit of help from someone like that can raise the visibility. But it really was a couple of executives, record company executives that actually saw them live and wanted to sign them on the spot that did it for them. And put them into the studio so they could make what has become a really, really strong classic rock album.
I can remember in when this album came out and was basically current. Someone saying that Gene Simmons was actually the bass player for Van Halen, and that and that because he didn't have his Kiss makeup on,
Nobody
kind of
recognized him.
And while that turned out not to be true, but there was definitely a Gene Simmons connection of some kind that I recall hearing about from the very beginning. And when I said a few minutes ago that this is a big noise, that might have been a little snippy, but it's really true.
Mm-hmm.
I was back in those days. Hard rock was one of the main types of music that I listened to, and the material that you first heard on the radio, which was the first I heard was You Really Got Me, the cover of the Kinks song, and it just had some muscle to it. The guitar sound had blood flowing through it.
Yeah.
You know, whatever one might think of the style of music or the material that they did, there was definitely power in the guitar playing. And then
Mm-hmm.
like Running with the Devil was another, you know, that was on the radio.
Yeah.
And you're like, this is hard rock that has some teeth to it. I mean,
Yeah.
and uh, you know, I didn't necessarily think in these terms back then, but as time went by, it became clear that Eddie Van Halen was a exceptionally talented guitar player,
Yeah.
in terms of knowing how to get that big sound out of his equipment.
Yeah.
You know, because it doesn't. I mean, he wasn't necessarily sort of your technical, you know, sort of Robert Fripp, Steve Howe, Al Di
Mm-hmm.
Meola style, you know, virtuoso on the guitar. But boy, he could get sound
Oh yeah.
out of
And
the electric guitar in a way, like kind of, you know, more so than even like your Eric Clapton, Jimmy
oh
Page
yeah.
types. I mean, he was sort of like Hendrix, you know, Stevie
Yes.
Ray Vaughan. I mean, there's no question that the material had that oomph to it that was unique,
Yeah.
primarily, in my opinion, because of Eddie Van Halen's guitar sound.
Well, first of all, I agree. You're talking about, something really different with Eddie Van Halen's, level of guitar playing. It was, kind of this idea of people that knew guitar, right? I mean, I'm not a guitar player. I wasn't a guitar player at the time, but people that knew guitar would didn't realize that you could get that out of a six-string guitar, right? What he was doing. And I think that was that combination of, the way that he played, his speed, the ability to, it's like, oh yeah, that's a lot of notes, man. I mean, coming out of that guitar. But it just, the way he played it, and I'd agree with you. You've got to look to guys like Jimi Hendrix, right? I mean, Jimi Hendrix, one of the reasons that he could do what he could do with the guitar was because his hands were so large. And he had the ability. I mean, if you've got a larger hand, you've got the ability to, control a much, broader part of the neck of the guitar and do different things with it that I mean, just physically, right, able to do that. Now, that alone isn't going to make you a great guitar player, but you take someone who is a great guitar player and you add some of these characteristics, and suddenly, boom, this person is doing something that nobody else seems to be able to do with the guitar. And I think that was the feel around Eddie Van Halen, that what this guy is doing with the guitar, no one else right now out there seems to be able to do what he's doing with the guitar. And it wasn't just, the ability, although he did have his famous guitar that he, used throughout most of his career. He did some other things too. He used an electric sitar to overdub on some things. He also had some, techniques as far as kind of two-handed thumping of the guitar that were just kind of an unusual technique to add on to just playing some rock and roll, which he seemed to just be instinctive to him on what he could do. I'd also say though that for Van Halen, it was more than just this great guitar player. I think that, and let me be clear, my personal opinion of David Lee Roth has always been that he's a little bit of an over the top goofball, right? I mean, from a personal perspective, but that guy's voice, he had a rock and roll voice. He also, with this ability to have smooth delivery of lyrics, and at the same time almost leverage his voice as an instrument. In the screaming and howling that he did, and it wasn't just screaming and howling; it was screaming and howling that fit in well with the music and other effects of with his voice. That we'll talk about some of them as we're going through the album. But he had a charisma as a lead vocalist that ticked very well with what was going on at the time, and I think set a bar for this notion of a glam rock vocalists, before there was glam rock vocalists, when you start to talk about your MTV era where looks became so important and that type of thing, David Lee Roth was doing that before it was really as important as it became during that MTV era for bands that were going to pursue that type of path. But here we are in the late 1970s, and very powerful performer. I think that's part of what led them to this local success that they had as a live band was not only Eddie's guitar playing, which again undisputed as a revolutionary guitar player, but also the presence of David Lee Roth, I think, was a big part of that. And again, I say that as a person who kind of always when you start talking about the qualities of someone like David Lee Roth, I think there's a lot lacking in the pro column. But man, the guy had pipes and the guy could sing.
I don't think that it was as apparent right away when you were hearing songs from this debut album on the radio. You could tell, okay, here's a guy, he's kind of a in-your-face vocalist. Yeah. And it was more of, at least initially in my mind, it was more of a, he's just kind of a good old rock and roll wild man. Yeah. And it wasn't just the sound of his voice. I mean, you look at, like the photo on the back of the album, with where he's kind of leaning over, and you see pictures of him in the Rolling Stone magazine or whatever, and it just appeared there was a physicality to his performance in addition to his singing, his vocals, that sort of added to the impression. Now, as time went by and Van Halen became more popular, and then he put out his solo material with California Girls and Just a Gigolo, and over the course of that time, it became clear to me that he was kind of an obnoxious clown. Mm-hmm. And he didn't have any self-esteem problems. And whatnot. And was kind of became kind of cartoonish character, really. But as you say, all that aside, especially on this early stuff, where the band was a little hungrier than they were farther into their career, which was very successful, starting with this album. He was an asset. I agree with you that his manner of performance and his actual performance on this album was a big part of the success. And the combination of the new powerful guitar sound that Eddie Van Halen was providing, combined with this, I agree with your use of he was a charismatic figure. Everything else aside, it really did. It was kind of a 1-2 punch. It really was. Yeah.
And it created what was just a phenomenally successful album. And I mean, I recall. This only has happened, I don't know, half a dozen times in my life, where people are walking around with an album or a CD that's been released or whatever, and it's, just saying, yeah, I just listened to Van Halen's album, and this is good. This is different. There was a buzz that, this was a time when us and a lot of our friends were kind of starting to really actively buy and listen to albums, and just the notion of, well, what are we doing this afternoon? We're going to listen to albums, right? We're going to go over to someone's house and listen to albums. I mean, this is kind of when this was happening for us, around this time period. And this was the first album in my life that I remember there was just this universal buzz between all the people that Van Halen, you got to check this out. Right. And there have been other bands and sets of music along the way. I can remember like when Nirvana came out, people were like, oh, you got to check these guys out. This is something different. And there's been other acts along the way that have just kind of captured the mindset of people that, enjoyed listening to music. But this was really the first time that had happened. And they were talking about this album right? Van Halen, and the pretty most people have seen or own this album that are our age and listen to music. The four members on the front of the album, there's kind of a blur effect that they do with each of the figures that just makes it look pretty fucking cool. And you see David Lee Roth there, and if you flip over to the back, you also get a view. This is just, again, kind of an iconic back cover. This bending back of his. I can remember looking at this saying, this guy looks cool, right? This was before MTV. You weren't getting the black leather pants, and this is kind of the way that everybody did showing, and the way that he's bent over like that, just kind of really almost in a complete circle. I remember thinking, wow, this David Lee Roth, he's cool. It did. Over the years, I also said, yeah, maybe cartoonishly cool, but at the time, this was awfully cool. And just real quickly, the inside of the album, you have just a Van Halen logo on the sleeve, and then some more pictures of the band inside there.
I recall. Because it is a striking image of him on of David Lee Roth on the back of the album cover. And I remember I didn't so much think, oh, he's cool. At that time I wasn't interested in leather pants or long hair. But the image was definitely cool. And it was like, look, these guys, they put on a show. They are putting it out there, whatever it is, whatever you think about it, they're putting their shoulder to it big time. Whatever it is they're doing, they're into it.
And they're working at it,
And so I can imagine seeing like a show when they were first out touring after this album had been released, that people must have been taken. I never saw Van Halen perform live. But I imagine back in the late 70s, after this album was released, that when people would go to see Van Halen, it's like, hey, these guys give you your money's worth. If that is what you're looking for, if you're looking for this sort of straight ahead, guitar oriented hard rock, you're going to get your money's worth out of Van Halen. That's the impression that they gave off. Or that's the impression that I got.
Yeah, and so you had this buzz around this band. You've got this, identification. And this album was panned by a lot of the critics, but even those that panned it recognized the talent of Eddie Van Halen and the talent of David Lee Roth in their comments. I think they just thought that, the types of material that they were working with, they did a number of covers, in this and a lot of their demo tapes and stuff like that. And, and they continued to do a lot of covers, even in their subsequent albums after reaching this level. But, looking back, a lot of those same critics are changing their tune a little bit. But even those that felt that, these guys are good, but they've got to kind of get something more going. And part of that might have been, a lot of times when people identify, great guitar players that come out were, or any type of great talent, musically, that, this is going to be about a shift in music, right? You can look at like the first British invasion, right? Where it's just kind of like, no, this is shifting music and some of the talent that came in that crowd. And that's happened obviously other times with punk, right? The Sex Pistols come out. This is a shift. Although nobody was necessarily talking about the excessive talent of any of the people in there. It was, no, this is going to change things. I really see that Van Halen was more of a return to kind of a more center, just hard rock and roll type sound. We also have to remember at this particular time period, you've got punk and disco and the new wave, kind of the, that had come off. On top of it, you've got metal that is in there. That's that's pushing away on these different things. And here comes Van Halen, and it's just kind of like, hey guys, how about just some hard, straightforward rock and roll, right? And and you see covers of a Kinks song, right? That that they put in here. That was an excellent song to cover because it started as what was already a very heavy song for its time period. But so I think it was more, as opposed to shifting music in a new direction, it was kind of a return to center for rock music that was incredibly popular, that's good for the rock and roll business, right? When it's just kind of like, hey, can we just have some good guitar and bass and exciting vocals and stuff like that can bring us together. And I think that this album kind of sat in that point. So certainly very, very popular, and a return to like, let's just rock for a while.
Well, and there was I kind of agree with you, and a lot of music that becomes unique and sort of groundbreaking. A lot of it has elements. I mean, if it's rock and roll, there's gonna be elements from the past.
Yeah.
And kind of combining the good elements from the past with the sort of technological advances that come with either new equipment or just a particularly talented instrumentalist such as Eddie Van Halen on guitar. Mm-hmm. It can give you a fresh take on something that is primarily based on the past. And in between the release of this album and the end of the decade, I mean, we had, like AC/DC, Highway to Hell, and Back in Black came out. And that's just, that. And now AC/DC had been playing, they'd released albums earlier in the 70s.
Oh, yeah.
And so they had already kind of established themselves. But those two albums, Highway to Hell and Back in Black, really, there was a different gloss on those records compared to their earlier material that fell more into line with what you're talking about. Like, this is a new high energy version of what's meat and potatoes for a lot of music fans. And they're going to be happy to see this new version. And I'm not I was never a huge Van Halen fan, as a band. But there's no question. I mean, I had this album. I got this album on CD. That doesn't change the fact that, for the reasons we've been talking about so far, it turned out to be a major classic in the hard rock, 70s hard rock realm. Mm-hmm. No question.
Well, and so let's start talking about it. But before we do, let's just listen to the way that this album starts. Side 1, song 1, we're talking Running with the Devil, and let's give it a spin. So, pretty interesting start. we're, silencing this kind of, whether it's like some type of almost like a siren or horn sound, or just, electronic kind of that comes in, and boom, boom, boom. Just this, let's get in here with, we're going to start low and heavy. And then it's going to have kind of this, almost like this like, almost a breaking glass thing on the keyboards. And then we move right into Van Halen's jam.
That's guitar.
Uh,
That's guitar.
It really.
Yeah. That's Eddie Van Halen guitar. Yeah. That's guitar.
Didn't know you could do that with the guitar, right? Is what I would say. So the just a great, and we get into this groove with this song right away, and you also layer right onto it, as soon as we get started, these David Lee Roth vocals, right? Kind of the scream that goes along with that before he sinks into what are, I think, very smooth vocals as he drops into this, I live my life like there's, he's not screaming, wailing, out of control. It's a smooth set of vocals. So he's moved away from using his voice as an instrument, and now more into, this traditional vocal mode, which just rolls well with this, with this song. And as it leads out of that, chorus and verse into some guitar for Eddie.
David Lee Roth, whatever one thinks about him, or whether they like his style of singing, the guy can sing. And his and he could also scream and holler and wail, and it fit together well in a rock and roll context, and generally and specifically with that Eddie Van Halen guitar sound. Because and I agree, that bass that comes in after the car horn. I went through a period of time where I played bass. Yeah. And I had an American-made Fender bass guitar. I had an amplifier and speakers, and I played with some guys, and we play in bars and do covers. Yeah. And my skill was very rudimentary, but I kind of figured out what it was like playing bass guitar. And I tell you,
sure,
that's heavy bass. Mm-hmm. Not difficult, not difficult to play.
Yeah.
But getting that kind of sound out of a bass, you are pushing the envelope of the instrument.
Sure.
Which can be done relatively easy with equipment and whatnot, but if you've got the right equipment. And then the guitar, when the guitar comes in, that's a guitar sound that you could use to like bust up pieces of granite. Yeah. It's what, like it or not, it's just, there's a lot of power in that guitar sound.
Yeah, absolutely.
And
it never goes off into some weird, improvisational type guitar solo throughout the song. In fact, the first break for guitar is very similar to what becomes the run out guitar at the end of the song, basically doing the same type of guitar stuff again, a little more action going on during the time, but straightforward, but very well put together and constructed song. Running with the Devil, nothing satanic about this song. Just the notion of you kind of living life fast, living life on the edge. And some of the things that go along with that in the song. Quite frankly, it's very similar in concept of the song "Highway to Hell" from AC/DC that we talked about before. Again, just kind of like, no, this is the life we're living. There's some people that don't necessarily agree with it, but it's the life that we're living. Again, not a whole lot of satanic references in this song, though.
No, I agree. There's nothing. Yeah. There's, despite the title and Running with the Devil, it's not that kind of song. And it's kind of like, least I don't need to beg or borrow. But then later, it's like, I got no love you'd call real, ain't got nobody waiting at home. So there's it's a fairly straightforward, you live fast and loose, and there's going to be some benefits to that, and there's going to be some downsides too. But hey,
Yeah.
I'm rocking and rolling.
Oh, totally. Well, and you know, critics of that type of lifestyle will say another way to describe that lifestyle is living irresponsibly. Or even if you don't, you know, not necessarily making stupid mistakes, but not necessarily wanting to take on a lot of responsibility because I've got things to do. And what does that lead you to? Well, you end up, you don't really have anybody at home for you. You don't have a whole lot built up again, but you're doing what you want to do day to day to day. So, just, and, you know, you feel that, you know, as David Lee Roth sings this song and about that life, there's a passion and you know, a defense of living that kind of life with this song. And then it's just backed up by, you know, great guitar. And it is just, it's a powerful, and at that time, a unique sound that, you know, really became that Van Halen sound that became, you know, so popular and so familiar to a lot of people. But man, when, you know, this is one of those ones where when you listen to it for the first time, it created kind of a spark that a lot of music doesn't. And this song really led the charge with that.
Because it sounds, you know, I mean, there's really nothing profound about the lyrics of this song.
Yeah.
It sounds fun.
Yeah.
It sounds fun, you know. It just and you know, there are times where and you know, some of the music that we've talked about on these podcasts, you know, there's been some real lyrical substance and some profundity in some of the music that we've talked about in terms of its social relevance and whatnot. But I mean, we are talking about rock and roll here. And you know, the bottom line is with rock and roll is you want to rock.
Yeah.
and this, or at least to some extent.
Yeah.
This song delivers.
Yes.
In that particular vein, it delivers.
It provides you the ability to rock. And, you know, as we've often talked about before, the other, you know, element that becomes very important to putting a record like this together and looking at a song like this, again, fairly straightforward. You got, you know, a solid vocalist, you got a great guitar player and the rest of the backing band, and that is the production. And in this particular case, the producer for the album, Ted Templeton, the studio, the record company, was excited about Van Halen. They knew the talent that they had, and they put Ted Templeton on this. You know, this is someone who was no stranger to some very successful artists, had done production for the Doobie Brothers and Montrose before this. In fact, his connection with Montrose is what eventually led to the introduction of Sammy Hagar. You know, but not just that, but, you know, Carly Simon, Van Morrison, Little Feat, Aerosmith, Eric Clapton, Cheap Trick, all bands that Ted Templeton had worked with or would work with. This was a very talented production individual, and you can hear it. There's more than just playing guitar, great vocals, whatever. There's great production in here. The effect that we were talking about that you mentioned was the guitar, right? I mean, just well placed, well done, and there's a certain kind of echo or spatial quality to a lot of the guitar that you hear that's clearly in the production, as opposed to just Eddie Van Halen standing in front of you and playing the guitar, which adds something that just would, you know, adds to what would have been there in a live performance. Something I wish I would have seen. We talked about didn't have a chance to see them perform live, but you know, there's something in the production quality of this album that adds a layer to this fantastic guitar.
Speaking of guitar, what song comes next?
Eruption takes us into the next piece, and this is just a straight out guitar solo. You know, nothing else added to it. This is just Eddie and in the recording studio. People have said that that some of this was just him screwing around on the guitar and they happened to have tape rolling. Either way, it's become an incredibly classic guitar solo. It's an instrumental completely. There's no lyrics or whatever, not a lot to talk about. And so let's listen to some of it.
Yeah.
But what we're going to hear is the I'm not going to start the beginning. I'm going to start into the song, and we're going to actually hear the transition of this song into the next song, which is "You Really Got Me." And this was one of those transitions. There was a break. There was a break in sound, so you got a little bit of dead air. But the way that it led and tapered down the guitar solo, listen for it here, and then comes into this just from "You Really Got Me," that it just worked right really well as a transition. So we're going to pick up this guitar solo about halfway through, and this is kind of when he's settled in a little bit. The very beginning of the guitar solo is really just kind of like this flurry of what is some, you know, exceptional guitar playing, something that, you know, a lot of people, and even people that played guitar, I remember just saying, I can't play that fast. Can't do it. But then it kind of settles in a little bit, and there's kind of a style that you'll hear on this, and then it comes to the end, tapers down, and then we're going to launch into "You Really Got Me," and we can talk about this on the other side.
All right.
Okay, so there was Eruption taking us into "You Really Got Me," and again, that listening to that guitar. I mean, you knew with this kind of guitar talent they were going to put something right up front that really showcased that, and just him, which was clear. Okay, classic guitar solo, classic song that unlike some songs that just get popped into an album maybe to fill up some airplay or whatever. I mean, there was some oomph that people really enjoyed in Eruption, and so great song, great kind of break from their first song to what would be their third song, "You Really Got Me," but a great way to kind of bridge that gap, and then just they go straight into "You Really Got Me" with that, with that guitar, that and move into "You Really Got Me," which again, a lot of air guitar got played to that song, and really, brought back to popularity a song that the Kings had done and done a very good job with before, and now brought that up to the mainstream audiences of the late 70s.
Well, there's a mutual friend of ours who plays guitar and who played guitar in high school, and in like at the Battle of the Bands that was at East High School in Appleton, mm-hmm. he and his band, one of the songs they played was "You Really Got Me," mm-hmm. But in any case, he I remember speaking to him at some point, and I don't think it was when we were in high school, but it was at some point. Because I've kept some contact with him, but he was talking about Eddie Van Halen, and when Eddie Van Halen was originally playing live, there were times where he would like turn around because he didn't want people to see what he was doing. Mm-hmm. He didn't want to like give away the secret to making the sounds that he came up with. And I can remember seeing a local band in the Fox Valley, at some point, and a guy, had like a red Fender Stratocaster, and he was playing guitar. And I remember seeing him where he was just tapping the fingers of his right hand. He was a right-handed guitarist. And instead of having his hand with the pick down by where you normally see the guitarist, picking the strings, he had his fingers up on the fretboard and was hitting them. And it was just it didn't look like a guitar player.
Yeah.
So I mean it was a technique, and I think that in a lot of respects that sort of finger tapping or whatever it's called is attributed to Eddie Van Halen. And as far as so just it was a unique at the time and kind of a revolutionary guitar sound, for lack of a better word. And as far as the beginning of You Really Got Me, I can remember, I think you were there because it was still in high school. Well, we were visiting some of our cousins, and it was second cousins in Hoffman's Estates, Illinois. And we were hanging out outside, and our respective parents were doing whatever they were doing. And it was one of the neighborhood guys driving by in a Dodge Charger or something, had the windows open, had a car stereo with some oomph in it. And that's the first time I ever remember hearing You Really Got Me, the Van Halen version. And it just has that power I was talking about before.
Yep.
And I'm a big fan of the Kinks.
Yeah.
So I don't, I think they're a very talented, interesting band, a lot more substance to their music than Van Halen, in my opinion.
Yeah.
But this version takes the same song and just takes it onto a whole different level.
And really, and when I say this, I mean, it's with that in mind, it actually stays very true to the Kinks song. They didn't add extra verses. They didn't throw in extra guitar solos or switch things up. They did that song as written. They just did it again at a much more powerful level. Now we're talking, fast forwarding, however many years it was. I don't know the exact year that the Kinks, did the song. I mean, just production and recording and engineering capabilities were significantly better. So that's only a part of it. What you got to add in is that Eddie Van Halen guitar, and then the David Lee Roth vocals were in there as well. There is a lot to hear of what he's doing with the lyrics and these extra little vocal effects that he would stick in from time to time. So to highlight that, I want to play another part of this song. We're going to hear some of Eddie's guitar. Again, not overly different or a departure from the guitar solo that the Kinks had, right, in their song, but we're going to hear Eddie do it and then drop back into some of David Lee Roth's vocals. So let's hear that, and then we'll talk about the end of the song.
Sounds good.
So again, right in the middle of that song, Eddie gets going, gives us some guitar that just rolls so well on top of this song that continues to have this kind of drive underneath it. It's a heavy but fast kind of this do 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 that is just rolling throughout the entire song. And you layer that guitar, and we also heard some of David's vocals on that, and some of those kind of effects that and almost like that he tosses in there as effects, and again more of an instrumentation of the vocals than the lyrics, but goes to just drive home what. Let's start with a great song. And I mean, we've even talked about this before. There's some, that's a notable song to start with, based on how heavy it was for the time period that it was written, and how it was received as a really kind of a heavy song before there was any metal out there or that type of thing. And takes a really good song and just drives it forward to a really new level. Just powerful. There's power behind the guitar and the vocals that you're hearing, on top of just what's a great and fun song.
The guitar work speaks for itself. I've talked enough to explain my feeling about the quality of the guitar work. And with David Lee Roth, it's almost like if he had kind of stayed in his lane, and just sang and was a vocalist for a band or bands that played material like this, he'd have a much different sort of public persona than he eventually acquired, because he wasn't afraid to talk into a microphone if someone had a question, or if he was being interviewed by a music magazine, he'd speak his mind. And some of the material that he recorded, when he was doing solo work and MTV videos and stuff, it just was kind of clownish, in my humble opinion. But if, let's say, the only document out there of David Lee Roth that was kind of out in the public square was this album, and that's it. I mean, his whole persona, just the way that people think about him would be different.
Oh, absolutely.
What he did meshed very well with what Van Halen did on this album. It was, if you want to listen to some of this kind of stuff, David Lee Roth does a good job.
Yeah, absolutely.
If this is what you want, he does a good job.
And a lot of people wanted it at this time. I'd agree with that 100%. It's in some ways it's kind of a shame. I mean, David Lee Roth is not the only rock musician who has let their personality and antics get the best of them. So I'm not trying to pull him out of the crowd to say he did this. I'm more focusing on the fact that Eddie Van Halen, rightfully so, gets this credit as this just monumentally great guitar player that that propelled Van Halen into incredible commercial success, and again, rightfully his position on whatever Mount Rushmore there is for guitar players to be on there. I just also like to make it clear, I really think that David Lee Roth's contribution, especially on this album, was another part of really bringing together an incredible performance. And we had a guitar solo in there, so no David Lee Roth, but these first the first song, Running with the Devil, and this one, You Really Got Me, were not only great guitar performances but incredible vocal performances as well.
No, and just as far as the side so far, it just, good, bad, or otherwise, Van Halen wouldn't have been as good as it was if it weren't for David Lee Roth. I mean, someone, if they'd had some, less someone with less charisma, with less energy, with less visual flair, it would have been something different than what it was. And I agree with you that he, whatever one thinks of David Lee Roth, he shouldn't be denied that credit as well. I mean, the drums and the bass probably a little more interchangeable, but the guitar and the vocals, no, I agree. Yeah, I agree. They were both necessary components for what turned out to be a incredibly successful debut album from a band like this.
Yeah, and if you go and watch some Van Halen tribute bands. And there's some very good ones that are out there, and that, I mean, including the members of the band that point out there's some people out there doing justice to some of the music that they did. A lot of them focus on the David Lee Roth era, and they put out lots of Van Hagar fans. They sometimes will refer to them as some very good music with that. But I mean, I think a lot of the purists really look to that David Lee Roth period and the excitement that he had as a performer. Just a different type of guy, Sammy Hagar. But now, moving from there, let's move on to the fourth song. Again, another pretty strong vocal performance along with the guitar, and that's song number 4 on the side was "Ain't Talkin' Bout Love." I don't know if there's another song with as many apostrophes in the title, but that's what we're talking about here. And this is kind of an interesting song. It's clearly about living on the edge in one way or another, and that can be the illusion of how great living on the edge is, as opposed to the reality of actually living on the edge. It can be focused on the lifestyle that they were experiencing as a growing rock band. There's discussion of addiction being the theme. There's also the discussion that domestic abuse and someone who was a wife beater is what they're talking about here. The bottom line is, it discusses this notion of, look, I'm not necessarily here for good or great reasons. I'm not here. We ain't talking about love, and they when they bring those lyrics up in the song, that they ain't talking about love, David Lee Roth comes back with, "My love is rotten to the core," right? Which is probably the line that really sticks out the most in this song. We ain't talking about love. My love is rotten to the core. So kind of like, you don't want any of that, or I don't want any of that. I'm looking for something that isn't necessarily as pure, as nice, as kind as that type of thing. And later in the song, he discusses the idea that he's been to the edge and he's lost a few friends there. Again, this notion that, okay, the edge might be seen as a glamorous place to hang out, but it isn't necessarily a great place. And you can look at other parts of the song. Are they talking about love? Are they talking about a relationship? Are they talking about lifestyle? Are they talking about some of the downside of fame or whatever? Hard to get your arms around the specifics, but not hard to get your arms around, again, there's a driving pace to this particular song. And I want to play, and then I'll get your thoughts on the song, Mike. I want to play a clip. We're going to be in the middle of the song here, and we're transitioning from your starting verses of the song, and we're going to hear some guitar. I want to start with the guitar, and then I want to take us back when David Lee Roth brings us back into the to get a little bit of the middle section of the song, and then we'll talk a little bit about it on the other side.
All right.
I stood and looked down. I lost a lot of friends there, baby. I got no time to mess around. So if you want it, got to bleed, boy, baby. Yeah, got to bleed, baby. You got to bleed, baby. Got to bleed, baby. Ain't talking about love.
So you heard that there. Got some fast moving guitar that comes here, and then we come back into that the oft repeated words in this particular song about how David Lee Roth's love is rotten to the core, again, and into the rest of the songs. And then it gets to, again, this other set of lyrics. We kind of have a break here, and it changes up a bit his lyrics, and we hear a lot of David Lee Roth's vocal effects. We heard him in the clip there as he's talking about how, baby, yeah, you got to bleed, baby. Like if you're going to be real, if you're going to understand life, if you're going to do what I want, right, you've got to bleed. And then you hear David, he's got this kind of clicking and stuff in his voice as he moves into, again, very driving. You can hear the kind of the force that he's getting at with that. So I think another great example of the combination of really great rock guitar and very powerful and strong vocals that kind of bring this song together.
Well, as far as the sound of the song, I mean, I agree with you. It's this sort of power chord riff, and a lot of singing, a lot of vocals in the song, and I think as far as what the song is about, it's obviously it ain't about love, and
they ain't talking about love.
They ain't talking about love. But it's not about desire.
Yeah.
I think what it's about is appetite and feeding the appetites that a guy like David Lee Roth might have, or at least the character in the song,
Yes.
And whether it's appetite for sex, appetite for drugs, appetite for adventure, appetite for you got to bleed, baby. I mean, is that as a result of domestic violence? Is that as a result of, I'm not here to protect your virginity. I'm here to take it.
Yeah.
Or whatever it might
That's
be.
not my job.
It's and so the I think if I had to interpret what this song is about, I'd say it's about someone who's not interested in love or affection or even just regular sexual desire. Someone who's got appetites and wants and is going to feed them.
Yeah.
And that's the objective.
Mm-hmm.
And he's not going to worry about your broken heart along the way.
And all of it done on top of this kind of, again, driving, powerful guitar that is both, underneath the entire rhythm of the song, as well as some, more powerful lead guitar that we break into as we're going through the song. So just again, nothing to put anybody to sleep. That we've been listening to so far, right? This is 4 songs that have just kind of come at the listener fairly hard to keep us moving through this album. And we get then to the final song on the side. It's called "I'm the One," and this really kind of brings a combination of different things together here that I think was done very well. Because you've got strong guitar, right? Moving in here. You've also got, right, what is not just, I think, some good lead vocals, but you've got these backing vocals from the band that really, float, that kind of go back and forth with the lead vocals. We've got some guitar going on in there, and then we actually transition into some a cappella in the in the middle of the song. So let's play that. We're going to get a little bit of a taste of all the things that I talked about kind of in this one middle section of the song, and then we'll wrap up the song on the other side.
shoo-be-doo-wah. Ba-ba-da, shoo-be-doo-wah, ba-bum-bum. Ba-ba-da, shoo-be-doo-wah, ba-bum. Ba-ba-da, shoo-be-doo-be-doo-be-doo-wah. Ba-ba-da, shoo-be-doo-wah, ba-bum. Ba-ba-da, shoo-be-doo-be-doo-be-doo-wah. Ba-ba-da, shoo-be-doo-wah, ba-bum. Ba-ba-da, shoo-be-doo-wah.
So you don't normally hear, that kind of guitar and those kind of strong lyrics going along with a doo-wop kind of a cappella song that, that comes in. I mean, it seems to drop out of nowhere into the song, yet it works well, right? It sits in there and it's just, it feels well. When you're first listening to it, you're not expecting it to make that transition. But, again, turns around and looks at the some of the flexibility of the vocals of the band on top of, again, a pretty driving song that, really brings this album side to a close.
Well, and the Led Zeppelin song, The Ocean, off Houses of the Holy, it has and that's a hard rock song.
Yeah.
And it has that break where there's the a cappella singing, that la, 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 la.
La, da, da, da,
And this is, this is a little different than that. This is more a doo-woppy, ba-ba-da, shooby-doo-wah. But it's kind of like that, it's this hard rock song where that comes, and I can remember, when I first was listening to this album, just say, wow, it's kind of cool. And I don't. This song is what I call a guitar rave up. I mean, this is one where the Eddie's lead guitar is the musical focus.
Sure.
And this one they are talking about love. He's at show your love. I'm the one you love. Now, it's still a little chauvinistic, one might say.
Come on, baby, show your love.
Show your love. I mean, and it's not like send me flowers or sing me a love song. It's probably more like, get on your knees. But it's at least there's a little bit more I want you here, as opposed to, so but it's not rocket science here, this song is pretty straightforward. So it's not quite as, the love isn't rotten to the core.
No,
but it is probably a little bit more easy come, easy go than a bona fide love song would. Because, it's not I love you, it's I'm the one.
Yes, I'm the one. And if you say you love me, prove it, right?
Yeah. But it moves right along, and it. It's a good thing, I think, that you chose to play the a cappella clip, because it just puts a gloss on this song that takes some of that, chauvinistic me. It lightens it up a little bit.
Yeah, exactly. And the first three songs on this side, we have A Situation, very well known songs, very well recognized, but these last two as well. I mean, these, you will still hear these right on on classic rock radio today, because it got a listen. It was on the side that really gave Van Halen their start. So they're all pretty well-known songs by a lot of people that that listen and follow classic rock music, and it's hard to do that without listening to some Van Halen along the way. But what it really does is wrap up a side of music that literally goes down in rock history. Massively commercially successful album, very critically acclaimed album, and this side is I believe clearly the strongest of the two. It's this side that really introduced us all to to Van Halen.
Well, and I certainly agree that this that side one is the superior side. Although there's stuff on side two worth listening to.
Yeah, very good overall album.
And
very good overall album.
And I guess the message that I would send is like, if you took the way that I thought about Van Halen when this album was out, but it was before their second album,
mm-hmm.
and then you take the way that I thought about Van Halen 10 years later, in the
mm-hmm.
late 80s instead of the late 70s, very different.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I'd grown weary of David Lee Roth, and it wasn't as new and exciting, and it just I didn't really find myself looking to Van Halen as kind of one of those polar stars of music. I never really thought him. That's maybe a bad term, but hey, the bottom line is that for anyone who's not really listened to a lot of Van Halen and has only gotten bits and pieces, go back to this first album and give it a listen. And Van Halen, certainly in this incarnation at this time, they were a great band. I mean, they were and they did what they did. They put out just relatively straightforward hard rock, and with the combination of Eddie Van Halen's prowess on the guitar and David Lee Roth's inimitable style, and really it's worth checking out.
Oh, and I also think it is a fantastic illustration. When if somebody poses the question, what did MTV do to music? And listen to this album, or think back to when you were listening to this album, whatever it might be. And then this is the fast forwarding that you just talked about. Yeah. You fast forward 10 years and everybody is thinking about a different type of band. And I think it goes far beyond just the David Lee Roth, Sammy Hagar kind of transition. I think you have a different type of environment of music, which Van Halen was successful in both the pre and the post MTV environment. But part of that was because their style pre MTV is what really guided a lot of the initial MTV style, which is why I think a lot of people see them as like a pre glam rock type band. And that look, that feel, the performance, that really got sucked into a lot of that early MTV, type video songs and whatever. And I don't think it was just, the personality of David Lee Roth. MTV allowed that personality really to come to the forefront in different things that were happening. And I kind of see that. Look, a lot of people, I was in the service and overseas when MTV really became popular and people were watching it all the time. And so I know people got a lot of enjoyment, especially in those early years from it. And that's not what I'm knocking. It just, it made a change to music when it wasn't just how music sounded anymore. It was how it looked. And that I think caused some problems. And this is, go back to this album and just listen to it. And that's what I was what I was looking for in rock and roll.
And when you say glam rock, I mean, there was glam rock was in like the early '70s. You had bands like Slade and Roxy Music, Gary Glitter, David Bowie, and whatnot. But what MTV ended up doing was kind of taking some of the visual aspects of those artists and made it kind of necessary.
Yes.
So I don't disagree with you there.
You are right. I was really should have more focused on the MTV hairband type stuff, because to your point, glam rock had been around long before Van Halen was out. But so either way, regardless, Van Halen first album, give it a listen. That was side one. Great album and great conversation, Mike.
Definitely. All right, Mark. Good one. We will talk to you next time.